Hi, ladies, and welcome to our interview with Dr. Nahille Natour. You are really going to enjoy everything that she has to share with you today. Nahille, would you like to introduce yourself to the girls and tell them a little bit about what it is that you do?
Sure. So as Christina said, my name is Nahille Natour. I am a board-certified OBGYN, or obstetrician gynecologist, and I have been in practice for almost 20 years.
Wow. Wow. You don't look old enough to have done that for 20 years.
Definitely old enough.
So when you say obstetrician gynecologist, so what exactly, because, us ladies, we go to, there are some doctors that are just obstetricians, some that are just gynecologists, so do you do it both, or is there a hybrid of what you do?
So I do both. So obstetrics is the care for a pregnant patient, and gynecology is the care of the female organs, shall we say. I do both. My practice now is just hospital-based, so I'm mostly taking care of emergencies in the hospital, whether they be pregnancy-related or related to gynecology.
So then you don't have, so when you say that, that means that like you don't have your own private practice with your own patients, kind
Correct.
of thing. You're just dealing with patients who are just coming in via the emergency room.
Exactly.
Very cool. I didn't realize that you could do that.
Yeah, so I left private practice 7 years ago for this different model. And the reason why I did so is because it afforded me a better work-life balance.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So how was it having a private practice then? Was it just like so high stress? Like, were you always having to find new clients, or what was that like?
So so if you're part of a successful practice, patients will come to you. And so that really wasn't a stressor. The stressor was that there were a lot of patients. And, you go from being in the office to taking care of patients in the hospital. And while we had some time off, I never really felt like I was able to turn it off. I didn't stop worrying about people and wondering what was happening to them. So while I still wonder and worry, it's to a lesser extent because I don't have the long-term relationships. I know that sounds really weird, but it has helped me be able to turn off work when I go home and just focus on being at home.
Well, I mean, especially with being an OBGYN, I can totally understand that, because, I mean, you've got a private practice. Babies sometimes come on their own schedule. And so, yeah,
Usually.
just being able to schedule your own time off, I can see that would be a very big challenge.
It is.
So did you always know that you wanted to be a doctor? Like growing up, did you always know that? Or what motivated you to join being a doctor and then also being OBGYN?
So I always wanted to be a doctor ever since I was probably 6 years old. I don't really know why, but that's what I wanted to do. In high school, I kind of played around with maybe thinking of other things, but I always ended up coming back to the sciences. So I liked math and science when I was in school. I was good at math and science. That doesn't mean that geography and English and other subjects aren't important. They still are, because you have to write reports and you have to know where things are in the world. And so just being good at one area doesn't mean that's what you should do for the rest of your life and ignore everything else.
Yeah.
After high school, I went to the University of Texas at Austin. And while I was there, I was part of a program where we supported fellow students who were coming in looking for contraception or sexually transmitted disease prevention. And so with that program, I became very intimate with women's health and really enjoyed working with my peers in that way. And that kind of followed me to medical school. I mean, again, I tried to like other things that didn't have as unpredictable of a schedule, but OBGYN is what found its way into my heart, and I still really enjoy what I do, and I know that I make a difference when I go to work, and that's really important to me.
It's very cool being able to make a difference. I mean, I would think that is, especially with women's health, there are a lot of things that you can have an impact on with somebody's future, their future health and everything.
Absolutely.
So in order to become an OBGYN, I mean, we all, like, we're going to have to do, like your 4 years of undergrad, and you're going to have to go to medical school. But for the specialization within OBGYN, what does it take to do that?
So when you're in medical school, you decide what kind of doctor you're going to be. And based on what type of physician you want to be, then you will pursue a residency in that field. Different fields have different lengths of residencies. So, for example, family practice, internal medicine, those are 3-year residencies. Surgery is a 5-year residency. OBGYN is 4. And then if you want to subspecialize, then that's additional time. So, for example, like your cardiologists or your gastroenterologists, they do internal medicine for 3 years, and then they do a fellowship. So,
go ahead.
4 years of OBGYN, and I'm a general OBGYN. There are subspecialists within OBGYN, but I really liked everything, and I didn't want to focus my practice anymore.
So what's the difference between a residency and a fellowship?
So residency is kind of the first layer of training, and both of them are very apprenticeship-like. So you are doing the work, you are learning under someone who has a lot more experience, or a master, if you would say, and they're showing you the ins and outs and teaching you how to do your job well. Once you finish residency, if you choose to go on for further training, that's what we would call a fellowship. And so those are for the doctors who have a subspecialty within their specialty. So it's another layer of training.
Okay. So my existence of knowledge about residencies is what I've watched on TV shows.
Yes.
So, like, how do you, so do you apply? Like, how do you determine where you're going to do your residency? Like, do you get to does the hospital pick you, or do you pick the hospital? Is there an application process? Like, how does that part happen?
So there is an application process. It's actually a national application process. And you get picked through a match program. So if a residency feels you would be a good fit, then they would invite you to interview. So you'll go, you'll interview, you decide whether or not you like it. And once all the interviews are done, then you're going to come up with your rank list. So you're going to say, I like this program number 1, I like this program second best. And if there's a program you really didn't like, you may not even put them on your list. The hospital's going to do the same thing. They're going to say, I like this candidate the best, I like this candidate second best, etc. And then through the magic of a computer, somehow a match happens. And theoretically, if you're ranked high on the hospital's list and they are your number 1, then that's where you will go.
Okay. And then another question that I had too, because you had touched on, you can have, like, in medical school, you determine, like, what kind of doctor you want to be. So you picked, like, OBGYN, and then you decided not to, like, specialize even further. So what are some of for somebody who might be considering it and wanting to know, like, what are some of the other, I guess, like, specialties under that OBGYN umbrella?
So we have 4 subspecialties under OBGYN. So the first is maternal fetal medicine, or a perinatologist. And maternal fetal medicine doctors are high-risk obstetric specialists. So they do a lot of the high-risk ultrasounds. If there is a complication in the pregnancy, they are usually consulted to help with that complication. So they really are very focused on pregnancy, and not just any pregnancy, those that are high risk. The second subspecialty is reproductive endocrinology and infertility. And these are doctors who specialize on the gynecology side. And they are helping women with infertility and other endocrine problems. So ladies who are having trouble getting pregnant. Sometimes there are young women who have problems with their period and they don't get a period, or they have some other congenital problem that causes a hormone deficiency, so they may see a reproductive endocrinologist, an infertility specialist. Most reproductive endocrinologists do a lot more infertility than they do endocrinology. The third is going to be gynecologic oncology, and these are also gynecology specialists, so they take care of gynecologic cancers. So they do the specialized surgeries, and they usually will do any chemotherapy that is required afterwards.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and last but not least, we have our urogynecologists, and these are pelvic floor specialists. So they help take care of women who have either an anatomic problem with their pelvic floor, or they have trouble with urination or losing urine, incontinence, etc.
Oh, wow. I didn't really think about all of those different areas with getting in specialized, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
As there advances in the medical field and everything like that, I can see that there would probably be even further specializations, but that's really cool. How has, and just speaking of that, like how has the OBGYN field of medicine changed from when you first entered to now? Have there been a lot of changes?
There have been changes, and there are more coming. So obstetrics and gynecology got lumped together many, many years ago because we're really focused on the same area anatomically. At one point, there were obstetricians and there were gynecologists. And then they realized, well, we're kind of learning the same thing. Let's put them together. As advances in surgical techniques are advancing, there are going to be more surgical specialties, and it may not be that they do a fellowship per se, but they may just do more surgeries, and so they'll do the more complicated, non-cancerous GYN surgeries. We're also seeing more people stay more office-based and not really do as much hospital work. And then you have the OBGYN hospitalists like myself, and we are seen as inpatient providers, so hospital-based only, but we're also kind of the first responder from an OBGYN standpoint. So any OB or gynecologic emergency, we're the ones to respond in the hospital. And as you probably know, obstetrics is highly variable. Not only do we not know when those babies are going to come, we don't know who's going to have a complication sometimes.
Yeah.
So you have to be present in order to take care of people, and you can't expect one person to be in the hospital all the time. So my job is to provide that support for the community physicians so they can actually leave the hospital sometimes.
So it's almost kind of like the reason why you went to the hospital was because within your private practice you weren't getting enough time to have that break or whatever, and now it's like you're the person who's giving them the time to potentially take that break. So that's kind of nice.
Exactly, yeah.
So throughout your career, what do you think has been the biggest thing that you struggled with, and how have you handled it?
The biggest thing that I struggled with was truly work-life balance. I don't know how I missed out, but I didn't really learn how to create boundaries. And how was I going to focus on work at work and do a really good job there? And then when I leave, be able to focus not on work and take care of myself and my family and do all of the things that we need to do to support ourselves so that we can work. I mean, when you're in high school, you have a lot of interests and you do your schoolwork, but then you may also be on a sports team and you may have different clubs that you're a part of, and high school makes it really easy to do that. College is similar. Actually, medical school is very similar, but when you leave and you no longer have that support system providing all of these opportunities, you have to pursue them on your own, and you have to keep making goals for yourself and keep deciding, what it is you're going to focus on and improve. A lot of my friends, and myself included, once we've finished and got a job, we're like, so what's next? Because we're always in pursuit of something else. And I think life is like that. You're always in pursuit of something. And so you have to be a self-starter in terms of figuring out what that will be for you and making space in your life in order to do it.
I gotta be honest with you. You mentioned that, you feel like you missed that or whatever about boundaries. I'm like, there's a whole, you are in a very large group of people then, because I think that's something that's very typical. And I think you bring up a good point too. Like after college, you're used to this support system and this structure. And then when you leave college and you're out on your own for real, having to create that structure yourself a lot of times can be very challenging. So getting used to putting some of those simple steps in place now while you're in high school, and that falls into when you're in college, helps set you up for that success, and noticing where the boundaries need to be between work and home life and that kind of thing. Because I think too that as we potentially move into a time period where there maybe is going to be more working from home, I think those lines are going to get blurred even more for people.
I agree.
And really making sure that we're making those boundaries, like you said, of this is the time that I'm working, this is the place that I'm working, the space that I'm working, and making that separate from, even though it's under the same roof. I think it's going to become a big challenge for a lot of people.
I completely agree with you.
What is maybe the funnest or most rewarding part of your career?
The most rewarding part, you could probably guess, is being able to hand a healthy baby to a parent. And it really is joyous every single time it happens. This is going to sound a little weird, but for me, the most fun happens when there may have been a little bit of an emergency, a little bit of an adrenaline rush taking care of her. And even though there was that complication, I'm still handing a healthy baby to a family, and they get to take care of this little bundle of joy for at least 18 years.
Well, see, and I don't think at first it could sound kind of weird, but I get it. It's like because you're working in an emergency room, and so people are coming to you kind of in that moment of panic, and they're not certain of what's going to happen, and you're able to, bring that stability and like, oh no, everything's going to be okay, here you go. So that is very cool.
And it uses my skills. I mean, women have been having babies for how long? And we all know women who are delivering in different environments. And when deliveries are easy and uncomplicated, they don't always need a doctor.
Yeah.
But it's the ones that aren't that need me. And those are the ones that really excite me in a professional way in order to be able to provide that expert care.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very cool. And I think we've already talked about a little bit like how things have changed in the OBGYN world. But what I want to know is, like, when you first set out, you just graduated from medical school, you finished your after you finished your residency, you had this idea of what it was going to be like, and now here we are 20 years later in reality. So how are those two things different? Like, how is what you thought it was going to be different from how it really is?
Hospital-based practice wasn't a thing when I left residency. This is relatively new. So I did not foresee that. I really didn't foresee how busy I was going to get and how many patients there were to take care of and how much paperwork there was to take care of. and for me, that was, I think the biggest shocker was not only am I seeing the patients in the office, but then I've got paperwork that I've got to do afterwards. And I mean, there are studies that have been done that basically say for every 1 hour that a physician's seeing a patient, they have 2 hours of paperwork to do. And that's not what I went to school for. Unfortunately, it's the world we live in, and there isn't a different way to do it, but It's a challenge. It's a challenge for every physician, and it was one that I was not anticipating.
I think that's true. I think of a lot of jobs too, is that it's kind of like you think about like the actual like work piece of it and not so much the admin part of the job. And that is, I think that throws a lot of us for a loop as well, for sure. So
Absolutely.
well, Nahille, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Ladies, be sure that you scroll down below the video. There's a written portion of Dr. Nahille Natour's interview, as well as the comments section where you can leave your questions and comments for her, and she will be back to answer them for you. So thank you so much. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.